republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Daniel Castricon,
Here.
Gary Hebner,
Here.
Kimberly Breland,
Present.
William Clark,
Here.
Heather Kidda,
Here.
Chris Scanlon,
Here.
Bonnie Sackman.
Here.
Excellent. Can I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So let's get right into our presentations, okay? First, we have our building condition survey presented by Matthew Zerkowski of CS Arch, our architects. And then we'll follow that by a budget presentation of our expenditures thus far. That'll be done by Brian Weir, our business official. And then after that, we'll come back up and we'll have public comment if anyone would like to speak, and then we'll get into the rest of the agenda. If the board would not mind moving down into the front row, and we'll have these presentations go off one after.
Someone move me. Can we move her? I don't think we can move her.
Just unplug her.
Bring her with you.
Because otherwise I can't see the presentation.
Okay. I got
Thanks.
you. You're in my hands.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Zerkowski. I'm with CS Arch. I'm here to give you a presentation on the building condition survey for the district's structures that were conducted last summer. Here's the introduction. So the quick agenda here this evening, walk you through the capital planning process, the building condition survey. What is it? What's the process? What comes of it? And why you do it. The changes of the BCS and the findings, which is really what I think most folks are most interested in. So the team that conducted the survey, CS Arch did the architectural work, Passero Associates handled civil and structural, and Blake Engineering out of Goshen handled mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And the purpose of the school construction program must be to improve the education of the children. This is a core fundamental purpose of CS Arch, and it's something we strive for each and every district we work in. So the capital planning process, what is it? Well, it starts with the building assessment, visual inspection, of which the building condition survey is considered. You survey each of the district-owned structures in concert with the educational assessment. You're getting feedback from the district themselves. You're then prioritizing the conditions and the surveys along with educational assessment. Prioritize what's most important, what is secondary or tertiary. You're then rolling that into your 5-year capital plan. The program, working with the finance department, coming up with bond. You're rolling out that capital facilities plan, going out for referendum to the public. Once that's approved, you're going through the standard design process. Schematic concept, schematic design, contract documentation, and ultimately construction. This is a cycle that repeats itself every 5 years is ideal. So what is the BCS and the process behind it? So it's a building condition survey, and it's required by New York State. What is it? Well, it's periodic inspections of all district-owned facilities. In some instances, we're talking your administration building, you're talking about bus garages and maintenance buildings, not to mention all of your elementary, middle, and high schools. And per district, this varies widely, but it's a survey of every district-owned structure. Whether you occupy it or not is irrelevant. You might lease it to another entity, but the district owns the building. And in terms of the state education department, there are building numbers associated with each building. And so they have on their radar the number of buildings and the types of buildings that get surveyed every 5 years. So what is this survey? Well, essentially, we are going through, design professionals are going through each building, and we're looking at everything from the grading and the drainage, foundations up to the roof, and all of the building infrastructure in it. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, windows, roofs, foundations, everything. Flooring, the whole kit and caboodle. Oops, sorry, my apologies. Back. Here we go. Okay. So what used to be the case is the state would require every 731 districts, thereabouts, in this state to do an assessment every 5 years. The state, in their infinite wisdom, decided, holy cow, every 5 years, that's a lot of paperwork that we have to process. So they went and they decided to stagger 20% of those 730-ish school districts every year. So they've created a 5-year cycle. And Tuxedo is in year 4 of 5. Right? So every year you're creating, there we go, scheduled for 2024. So we did our walkthroughs last year. We compiled our findings. And this is all made public record. So if you go onto the New York State Education Department, if you want to see the findings for this survey, the one done 5 years ago and the one done 5 years before that, it's all public record. And what we're doing on these forms, and the state has created this form, it's a boilerplate model for every structure, whether it's a bus garage or a high school. There's about 130 categories in each form, and some apply to each building, some don't. And the Office of Facilities Planning has created 2 what I would consider to be priority categories. It's health and safety and structural. And when we get down into the categories, I'll break it down a little further, but of the 130, there's about a third of them that fall into one of those 2. And there's ramifications for those 2 priority categories that I'll walk you through in a minute here. And some of them weigh a little heavier than others. The state is less concerned with, for instance, wood flooring as they are with roof. One could see why. And so they've sort of shuffled the cards a little bit, and they put certain categories now under health and safety and structural. I don't make these calls. Some of them seem a little odd. For instance, one of the structural elements is ceilings. That includes your lay-in ceilings that you'd find in like an office or a corridor. But windows aren't a priority category. But as we go through the forms, you'll see that they get classified, they get reviewed, and there's implications as to the criteria and the condition that we found for each and every one of these conditions. So the state has 5, I believe it's 5, primary categories: satisfactory, unsatisfactory, non-functioning, critical failure. So we go through as design professionals and we assess each of these 150 categories in each building, and we have to, on a visual inspection, categorize each one of them. And the best would be satisfactory, or I think it's excellent. some of the stuff that might have been just installed, maybe 6 or 12 months prior, all the way down to critical failure. I mentioned these two priority categories, these two priority classifications, health, safety, and structural. So if we go through any one of these buildings, if any one of the structural or health safety items are deemed unsatisfactory, the overall rating of the building is triggered as unsatisfactory. And you'll see this in a little chart in an upcoming slide. I purposely made everything 2-point font so you have to squint, but you can see the color, it's all color-coded. So again, a lot of these are by classification, and therefore, if anything is deemed non-functioning, unsatisfactory, or critical failure, or has less than 5 years of useful life, we are required to provide a budget estimate for its replacement. For instance, you might have one of the dinosaur boilers in the basement, and it's been there for 100 years, and it works just fine. Manufacturer would tell you you're on borrowed time because they really only go for maybe 50 years, but the one you have is 100 and it works just fine. We're going to classify that as unsatisfactory because it has less than 5 useful years left to it. And with that comes the budget estimate, a budget number to replace it in kind. Just so you know, and that is hard construction cost. There's no incidentals with that. So it's just swap it out for like. And you'll see the color-coded chart here in a minute. There it is, 2-point font, you're welcome. So each, so what this is, in the left-hand column, see ID number. This is directly tied to the 130 categories you'll see in the form. And you won't see numbers 1 through 130 because not all of them fall into health, safety, or structural. These are only the health, safety, and structural. These are the critical ones in the eyes of the state. And they have different system categories, whether it's the building envelope, whether it's plumbing, fire suppression, whatever it is. And there's a description, and what I've done is I've laid out the 5 structures that we surveyed: high school, elementary, the gym, the restrooms, and the storage structures up the street. And anything in red has less than 5 years left or were deemed unsatisfactory. The most important thing that I could relay in this conversation here is that a building being classified as unsatisfactory has absolutely no bearing on occupancy. So you don't have to worry that you're working or sending your kids to an unsatisfactory building. That's not it. The target of doing this is when you are putting together your next capital project and you're looking to replace the roof, the state will say is, oh, on your last survey, you marked it as unsatisfactory, you're picking up the red squares and you're resolving them. You're not replacing the roof because it looks old and wouldn't it be cool to replace it? If the state is on the hook for state aid, they want to make sure that design professionals are going through, they're reviewing the current status, and that each district is addressing items that need to be addressed, and that you aren't seeking state aid for a capital project on what the state might consider to be non-priority items. So the red items, as I mentioned, if any one of those were red, the overall classification of the building is red. That's just how it works. And it could be, we found one area on one side of the building that was in poor condition, the whole building's triggered that way. Ultimately, your orange, yellowish squares in time will turn red. Everything gets older and older, and you just have to keep up with the cycle. It's just how things work. Everything has a life expectancy to it. If you ignore it long enough, they're all going to be red. So you want to keep up with maintenance on every factor of the building. So here's the summary. So starting with elementary school, the items listed here are pulled off of the SED workbook. Each number is the class is the category. As I mentioned, there's about 130 or so categories, so there aren't 130 things on each slide. I would point to the items in red, and you will see the suffix H or S, called safety or structural. Those are the two critical designations I mentioned in the state's eyes. And this could be triggered by either deteriorated materials. You might have maintenance concerns. In some instances, like a radon mitigation system, in the form, there's a particular question that speaks to whether or not the district is abiding by a certain EPA standard. If that standard isn't being implemented, we have no choice but to mark it unsatisfactory. That's not to say that the conditions are hazardous. It's just a question. It's a yes, no. It doesn't mean anything beyond no. You,
Did you test for radon?
no, we do not.
Do you have any record of us testing for radon?
No.
Jared, if you wouldn't mind making sure that we put radon tests in the basements and let's find out what's going on.
So in each one of the next several slides, what we tried to do is give you a summary, and it would be the red items that correlated back to the matrix, the little 2-point font red and orange chart on the previous slide. So as we make our way to the high school, really, there's a continuous thread regarding the radon mitigation system. When we sat with the district building and grounds, Brian, Nancy, and asked those questions about such things like the mitigation system, what we're doing is we're going through and we survey the building on any particular date. Let's just say we did our surveys in the middle of August and we're up on the roof. Everything looks fine. I have no idea if there's been continued water leaks in the cafeteria below. I didn't see any of those signs. So we meet with building and grounds prior to this conversation and ask questions of the building and grounds department as to things that we could not visually see but might exist. So we can tweak the form accordingly because, again, we're not doing any destructive testing during our walkthrough. We can only ascertain so much by walking through. So getting that supplemental information from the district helps complete these forms. And again, what's listed on the screen is the items that have less than 5 years of useful life left. Some of them are clearly a little bit more of a higher priority than others. But again, we're walking through and we're making these visual assessments. A lot of them are far easier to address than others. But nothing, I just want to reassure the district in whole, there's nothing that we saw that deviates from any other district we walk through. So again, the classification of unsatisfactory having no bearing on occupancy, and there was nothing that we saw here that we don't see in every other district that we do every year. And CS Arch, we do between 3 to 7 school districts every year because it's on the recurring 20% of the state every year. So we have district clients every year, and everyone is dealing with the same things that we saw here. So there's no anomalies here. There's another level of anxiety I just wanted to quell. I push this button again. We'll go two slides ahead. Here we go. Gymnasium, really. So in the state's eyes, the gymnasium and the elementary school are two separate structures. Now you'll say, well, they're attached, and I can get to the other one going through the other one. So SED, the State Education Department, at some point previously, there was a project number associated with the gymnasium. So in their mind, you have 5 structures. So we surveyed the 5. because 5 were surveyed 5 years ago. So in this case, it really is, this is an easy example of the grading and the topography working against you. Because he's like, well, how do I make this building accessible? I can't put a ramp out in the front. When the conversation with the state is had about addressing an item like that, it's really easy to explain to them that the topography, the building is not inaccessible. You have to access through another structure to get to it. You're not going to create this zigzag ramp or build an exterior elevator to the outside. So the state is well aware that many buildings in the state are of same ilk. That if you're building on the side of a hill, the lowest level and the upper level aren't going to be one and the same. So that was one of the particular items, along with the ceilings, which, again, in this case, you're looking at an exposed structure and you're looking at insulation, and the insulation looks a little unsightly. It's considered a ceiling. And in the state's eyes, a ceiling is a priority category. Not a window, but a ceiling. As frivolous as that might seem, it is what it is. So this one has a few more items, but again, the deterioration of some of the concrete and the spalling, enough salt and northeast winters will do that to any concrete stair. Very, very, very common. Then you have the 2 structures up the street. And while it might seem rather frivolous, things like the accessibility to them is, in this case, it would be easily mitigated by creating, an asphalt walk or gravel dust or something along those lines. Wheeling across or accessing through a lawn is not considered an accessible path. That one could be easily mitigated. So even though these are unsatisfactory conditions, that's not to say they're insurmountable. Again, visual inspection, it is what it is. And then the storage building right next to it. And again, in these forms that we submit, run through the district, gain access to your portal, do all the paperwork, and then you ultimately click upload. The form from SED, all 60, 70 pages of it, the 130 categories, you're just answering the question yes, no, pretty much, or they're asking you what type of roof. They give you 5 options and other, and you fill in what other might be. The state's not looking for you to get long-winded on responses. Lord knows if they had questions, they can go back to the survey done 5 years ago, and the one 5 years before that, and the one 5 years before that. So we just answer as short and sweet as we can, and then we put a cost value to mitigate each one of these items. And that is found on the first page of each one of these forms. So if you were to go onto the state website and you want to see what the end product was, the first 5 to 8 pages talks about the number of students and which grades they are, what aspects like cafeteria, gym, library, science classrooms. You're filling out general information about the building, but on page 1, fittingly enough, there's a field that allows us to put in the total value of the following 70-something pages, and we sum it up on page 1. That is hard construction cost to address the unsatisfactory items on the following 70 pages. Yes. On page 1, it's one big number. If you flip through and you get through each of the 130 categories, if you see unsatisfactory, there's a number right underneath it. We just manually add all those up, put them up on page 1. What's that? Trying to remember offhand. Ryan, do you remember? I would say it's probably in the mid-teens if I had to guess. I've seen, depending on the size of the district and their diligence on repairs, a district not to be named in Rockland County, we had 340 million. So if you stick your head in the sand long enough, you're going to chalk up all bad news. And then you're kind of behind the wave, so to speak. But if you're keeping up with it, that number is pretty standard given the size of this district. You start getting into districts that have student counts double or triple, the number sort of stays in line. That one particular, they've fallen behind on their maintenance significantly. They also had 23 structures.
That said, I don't see us voting to install a passive radon mitigation system in our storage shed.
Yep. Understood. Understood. So, with that, are there any questions?
Yeah, who took the picture of the elementary school roof? That is wonderful. That is by far the best angle on that roof. Well done. Well done.
Any board members have any questions? Open it up to the public, if anybody behind us has a question?
I had a comment and a question. You're not the first, and I'm sure you won't be the last, but the name of that facility is Uvrard Field. You left one of the R's out.
My apologies.
Document.
My apologies.
I don't know if that matters with the state, but I guess we should correct it at some point.
Understood.
The other thing was when you showed the stairway in the new addition of this building, and it had some cracking among the cinder blocks, there was some question as to whether that was a design flaw from the get-go. Were you able to determine anything along those lines?
So I am aware that, separate to this BCS effort, that the structural engineer, Passero Associates, has been out here to monitor that step crack, and they have placed readings out there, and I have heard that there is potentially a design flaw in that addition. When we did our surveys, it was flagged. It is noted in, I believe, one of the categories is interior partitions. So it may be, I don't know if that is a health, safety, or structural priority category, but it was flagged and is noted in the report because that noticeable step crack is visible, and when we went through, we have to document that. I'd have to dig into the history of when that was done, but I know that Tom Ritzenthaler in our office, as well as Patrick Williams, the lead structural engineer, is well aware of that condition.
It was, they had Passaro in April of
Mhm.
last year. And they put the monitoring equipment in. But we haven't really had any interaction with you guys since then.
Got it.
So I'd be curious to know if over the course of, almost a year now, if there has been any deviation from what.
So I can speak with Tom and Patrick tomorrow morning and at least
the thought
close the
was
loop on that.
It was a design flaw.
Got it.
And obviously there, I don't think there's any sort of statute of
Limitations. Understood.
when it comes to that. That was the information that was given to us.
I would agree with you.
It has been some time since we, since Passaro was in.
Got it.
We put in their monitoring equipment, and we've been waiting on results.
Okay, I will look in that tomorrow morning. I was not aware it'd been that long. So the civil engineer does go through the entirety of the parcel of land, as well as, I believe the playgrounds is noted in one of the categories, along with all of the drainage and all of the site-related items. There are categories dedicated to things such as playgrounds. Yes.
So the actual structures though themselves, then you'll be looking at that?
Yes. If it's on district property, it does get visually inspected. And things as playgrounds or aluminum bleachers or backstops, there's categories within the 130 or so in the form. The State Education Department breaks out pretty much everything. And in some instances, if we're applying all 130 categories to each parcel, some apply, some don't. But if it exists and it's on district property, it's visually inspected and it's included in the report.
I couldn't really see the screen that well. Did it pass?
I don't know if, whoop. So in looking at this, when we start getting into the site-related items, the only two critical items are the water and the sanitary. So just based off this chart, I can't answer it because I don't remember offhand. These are the critical items in the state's eyes. It's not a summary of every item we looked at. Yes, sir.
When you say teens, you mean millions
Yes, sir.
right now. My question, is that everything that would need to be done, or is that just priority items that would need to be done?
That is everything.
That's everything.
Everything.
So
If it has less than 5 years of useful life on it, or it was categorized as unsatisfactory, we put a budget number to it. We add up all those numbers and we summarize that on the cover sheet of each of the 5 forms that we filled out. I offhand, I'm going off memory. I think it's teens, millions.
And that's everything in the step, major mechanical, like you were saying before,
Yep.
furnace, all those type things.
Yes, sir.
Has, sorry, has that been disseminated to our business department?
I believe so.
Okay,
Yes.
I just want to make sure that Brian's got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you very much, everyone.
And, if we got more questions, we'll send them over to you.
Please do.
Do you want to know the vestibules? Do you want to talk about that now, or? I have just a quick question to you. Do we have any outside, we're going to be starting a project with you guys with the security vestibules. Do we have any other outstanding obligations to you at this point? I think that's the only project, at least, that we've, really gotten together and put pen to paper.
I think as far as I'm aware, there were vestibules. I think there was some work on the cupola
There was talk about cupola, there was talk
and a
about
generator.
clock tower and a
Generator. Those are the 3 topics that ring a bell.
3 topics that we were
Yep.
expanding the conversation.
Yes, and I, so when we propose a capital project to the state, we have our workbooks, which require signatures by either board president and/or the school superintendent, along with the design professional. We package up that workbook, all the drawings and all the specifications. They go up to the state. They go through the review process. They have architects and engineers on staff. We did get word back last week that architectural and I believe engineering reviews have completed. Now we are responding to fiscal associate. And their overall, each district has a project manager from the state. They're a fiscal associate. What they're looking through is all of the SED workbooks. So really, they get into funding sources, how you paying for it, things like that. They rely on their engineers and architects to look over our drawings and specs. So once those 2 groups approve it, it gets raised up to the fiscal associate, who doesn't even bother looking at your drawings until the 2 people next to them say, go for it. So we're addressing Cindy, who did a lot of the building condition survey reviews last summer. She and I are working on responses to the state. So when that day comes that they are satisfied and approved, there's usually a notification that goes out to the individual who uploaded the drawings, as well as the school superintendent, because their name is on the forms. So there's a signature, and so they'll usually shoot out sort of a general notification email, at which point your building permits are probably a week behind that. So I can circle back with Cindy in the morning, find out when that addendum response to the fiscal associate was provided. The quirky nature of submitting to the state education department, for those that don't know, if you go onto the state's website and you submit a project, whether it's a capital outlay or capital project, 100 grand, 100 million, when you submit to the state, they will tell you roughly how long of a wait you have until the architects and the engineers pick up the drawings. Sometimes better, it comes in waves, because everyone's trying to do work in the summer. So most architectural and engineering firms are submitting to hit that summer window. So they get overwhelmed, so the wait time expands, and then it shrinks down, say, in the winter time. What they don't tell you is how long the fiscal associate will take. And I've been told I'll get to it when I get to it.
I've heard that before, too.
So the good news is the architectural and engineering reviews have passed. So now we're working with the finance crew to address any corrections that need to be made to workbooks. And then at that point, they'll say yes. They'll let you know, as well as the superintendent of schools, that permits are 5 to 10 business days behind that. So you get a packet in the mail.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Let's invite Ryan Weir, our business administrator, up to the podium.
Okay, good evening, board. So this is the second budget presentation and the second workshop that we'll be doing for the 25-26 school year. The last meeting, I think we touched on revenue as a whole and just some of the preliminary estimates that we have at this point. Tonight, we're going to start delving into the expenditure side of the budget, primarily the top half, which we'll break down shortly. Just so you know, tonight I'll be presenting using the state's uniform system of accounts. This is the same presentation that we get our financial statements in, and also the monthly board docs that you see. Those business reports are also in this format as well. Okay, so we have some key dates here, just keeping this updated. Anything you see that's highlighted, that's going to be an upcoming meeting and a presentation to the community. And then one other date to highlight, we have April 1st, that's the legislative budget finalized, meaning we should have final numbers for state aid at that point. Whether or not the budget will be final at that point, remains to be seen. And ultimately, you can't see it at the bottom there, but we have the budget vote, which we're still more than 2 months out from. Okay, so here's just a table of contents for what we're going to be covering tonight. So we have each category: Board of Ed, we have Chief School Administrator Office, also known as the Superintendent, Finance, Staff, Central Services, Special Items, and it should be, one second, Instructional, Admin, and Improvement. Okay, and again, none of these categories are unique to Tuxedo. It's the uniform system of accounts. They're the same category by category for every school. And what you'll see, typically with these categories, you're not going to expect huge changes year over year. They tend to be fairly static. But we'll dive into that. All right, so first you have Board of Education, District Clerk, and District Meeting. Under Board of Ed, that includes workshops, annual school board meetings, and supplies and materials. District Clerk, that's going to be the official secretary of the Board of Education, and any supplies and materials that might go along with that. And finally, District Meeting, that supports these annual budget meetings, and also the budget vote that we're going to see at the end of May. Along with that, we have election workers, printing ballots, renting the voting machines, and related expenses. Overall, you're seeing a 0.4% increase year over year. It's pretty flat. What you're going to see is the actual software that we use for these board meetings, board docs. That's up about $500, and that's really the only change you're seeing here. Here we have the Chief School Administrator Office with a description down below. Year over year, you're seeing a 4.97% increase. This is purchase services, conferences, subscriptions, meeting expenses, supplies and materials, and the salaries of the superintendent and the executive secretary. So 4.97% or a 14,000 increase year over year. Here we have finance, starting with business administration, which provides oversight over the school's assets and liabilities, including the accounting and financial operations. It includes the salaries of the school business official, accounts payable, and a number of purchase services through BOCES. In addition, you're also going to see bond counsel fees, legal notices, conferences, Medicaid claiming services, and state aid planning services. Under that, we have auditing. This covers the multitude of auditors that we are mandated to have as a school district. First, you have the external independent auditor, which we use an outside CPA firm for. They present the annual financial statements once a year, which are due in October. And it also includes the internal claims auditor, which is an employee of ours, and she reviews every check warrant. So any check that gets cut from here is signed off by the claims auditor. And she sits outside of the business office. We have the treasurer. This includes an outside bookkeeper along with a full-time deputy treasurer. The payroll function is also carried out by our deputy treasurer. Overall, and then we have tax collection, which is it's mostly a stipend, and then there's a small software fee in there. Again, we're seeing a 1.8% year-over-year increase, or $5,750. $5,750. So here we have staff. Again, this is the unified system of account. It's a bit of a misnomer. It's called staff, but under legal, what we're going to have is our outside legal counsel, which operates under an annual retainer. At this point in time, we have an open request for proposal. So we're accepting bids for the next school year. It's not something you're required to do, but every few years it's the best practice to do that, if for no other reason than to make sure we're getting the best price or the most competitive price. Next, we have personnel. You'll see that one from $122,000 to $7,700. This includes some HR services, and the big drop is going to be the result of the personnel director position being abolished. Those assignments have been allocated to 5 different current employees, so that represents big savings to the district, and that should be realized in perpetuity. And lastly, 1480, Public Information and Services. This is a service we get through Rockland BOCES. It includes content creation, budget and capital project communications, social media management, management of the website, media relations, and print publications. And as you can see, we have a 46% drop year over year. And again, that's because we abolished that position. central services. So this encompasses all of buildings and grounds, health and safety, central printing. 1620, which is operation of plant, that's going to be just the custodial cost and utilities. Most of that jump that you see there is going to be utility expenses. Then we have maintenance of plant. Again, that's more staff and grounds. It looks like it's down about 10,000. Really, we had a 5-year building condition survey, which we just heard about. You pay for that every 5 years. It's not baked into the budget next year. So that explains that drop. There's no decrease in service or investment. We have health and safety. This is 3 full-time security personnel. In the current school year, that's 2 Town of Tuxedo PD and 1 private security firm, full-time employee. And then central printing. This is just paper, postage, so on. Special items. First, we have insurance, and the bulk of that is going to be through a company or firm called Nicer. They're our main insurance provider. We don't have next year's premium yet at this point in the year, but we do have a conservative estimate, which we're using as a placeholder in here. School association dues, most notably New York State School Boards Association. Refund of real property. So this is for any upcoming potential tax certs. Even though we might not have any open tax certs at this moment, it's a best practice to budget something, especially in lieu of our tax cert reserve being depleted. And these last 2 expenses are BOCES expenses. As a component of OU BOCES, these are mandated expenses. If you see the jump in 1983, that's the capital expense line. OU BOCES just last year initiated a large $160 million capital project. As a component, it ultimately falls on us to pay for those capital projects. And what you see there, the 53, that should represent the full phase in. So in 26, 27, 27, 28, don't expect that jump to keep happening. It should be pretty flat going forward from that point on.
Just on the insurance.
Yep.
Nicer is a pool where all of the school districts who participate in it own it, and they've had a very rough couple of years. And there's a bill in front of the legislature right now to add $75 million to their reserves. Otherwise, this insurance number would probably double or triple. I hope that goes through. I think that's a fair number to put in there, that kind of increase, but could be worse.
It absolutely could be worse, and that number it's conservative, and it's an estimate that's been provided by Nicer. Instructional, admin, and improvement. So here we have summer curriculum writing. It's $3,000. If there's potential for new coursework, maybe a teacher wants to come in August and do some curriculum writing for the upcoming school year. Then we have 2020, which is school supervision. And this is going to be the coordination and supervision of curriculum and instruction on a district-wide basis. This includes the GGM principal, the assistant superintendent of instruction, the secretary at GGM, and the secretary at GFB. And then beneath that, under 2070, in-service training and instructions. Really, this is professional development, staff development, any type of trainings we utilize throughout the year. And this is this is similar to last year, but this is a lot of things that we're going to highlight at the future meetings, whether it be a new ELA rollout for GGM next year, RTI, social emotional learning, or just general strategic planning.
If I could add, I'm sorry I'm speaking so loud, but I want to try
No,
to
go
get
ahead.
to the microphone from here. The school supervision number being lower than it was last year is not because we're doing any less supervision or have less people doing the supervision. It's just in some of the efficiencies that we've obtained in the folks that we've hired.
Absolutely. And more specifically, at the GGM admin level. Okay, so this is a 6-year look back at the Tuxedo school tax rates. Of course, the tax rates for next year are unknown at this point. We'll have an idea of that at the April meeting, and really won't know for sure until the board adopts the budget on April 24th. From my perspective, I would say, especially in light of inflation over the last few years, this number is pretty remarkable. I don't know if you can see that, but it's 3.74%. That's not the average increase. That's the aggregate increase over the last 6 years. With that said, as we go through this budget, we're, of course, looking to operate it in as efficient a manner as possible. And the other thing I'd like to add, as we're going through these numbers, we're more than 2 months out from the budget. Some numbers are still trickling in, whether it's BOCES rates. I just earlier today got contribution rates for the employee retirement system for next year. And we're still finalizing coursework and scheduling for next year. So that's just something to keep in mind as we're more than 2 months out from the vote. That's it.
So, can you go back to that last slide there just for a second? Just want to make sure that folks understand this part of it here, right? If the inflation rate over the last 6 years has been, let's say, average 3%, right? We had some real big years and some small years, right? 6 times 3 is 18%. You would have expected an aggregate increase of 18%. What we're looking at is 3.74, which is really an incredible value that, I think that we've been providing to the district. Also, our preliminary numbers this year, even with everybody in the district getting a reasonable raise, in addition, in concert with our contract negotiations that we were successful in ratifying, we're pretty much flat on spending, I think, when you see the whole thing coming through. So I want to really appreciate the work that you're doing, Brian. I know we all feel that way. And if anybody has questions for Brian.
I had somebody send me in a few questions, so I might not understand them myself. So what is the tax base for the school taxes? So is the base considered the same thing as rate, and we're not going to know that number yet?
That's correct. We don't have that number yet. The tax base, I assume you want the tax assessment, right? That would be provided by the town assessor, Jim Davies.
Okay, so we don't have that yet. That's coming.
Correct.
Okay, and we won't have this yet, which is what is the assessment base of the village versus town properties in the school districts, or would that be the same?
Yeah, there's no differentiation for school tax. It's the same rate for everyone within the town of Tuxedo.
And how many special education students are currently enrolled? You wouldn't know that.
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay, how much is spent on special education, on those students for special education?
Well, at the next board meeting, which is April 9th,
Will
we'll go through the entire special ed section of the budget. So yeah, we'll have that.
And at that meeting, we'll have how much is being spent on transportation?
Yep. We'll have the entire budget, the total for the entire budget, and we'll be comparing it to prior years, and we'll talk about the tax implications of that.
Okay, and then, so this was mentioned, the federal government seems to be shutting down the Department of Education, and this affects Title I and IDEA. And I personally asked you how much that might affect us, and it's basically $150,000. So are we gonna be able to offset that somehow in our budget, if that happens?
If that happens, sure, that's something we're considering. At this point in time, we don't have a reason to believe that we won't receive that money. It's also administered by New York State. It's federal funding administered by New York State, so there's the opportunity for them to step in as well.
And then somebody said that, the Medicaid funding, how much is IDEA only funded by Medicaid? Or does Medicaid also fund a lot of other things that happen within the district because they're getting nervous about Medicaid?
For us, the Medicaid number is, I would say, immaterial.
Okay. And how much federal assistance do we receive for our school meals?
We'll have that number at the end of the school year, and I can certainly provide year to date. I just don't have it in front of me.
Okay, that's great. All right. Oh, what is the general fund versus the food lunch program? Are they two separate funds?
Yes, so the general fund is what we're looking at right here. That's the taxpayer-approved budget. The school lunch fund, also known as the C fund, that's what operates our cafeteria services. They're two separate silos, but ultimately, if there's a deficit in the cafeteria fund and they don't have a reserve, it's up to the general fund to close that gap. So,
Terrific, thank you.
yeah.
And my last question is, according to James Skoufis, the district has 48,600 of unused universal pre-K funds. Do we, and why?
So our UPK allocation is $108,000. We get $5,400 per student. If we had 20 students, we would get the entire allocation. Unfortunately, we don't.
Not getting enough students
Ex-
to warrant that.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
May I again, Brian?
Sure.
Also for the pre-K, it's this, we get $5,400 for each child that's enrolled in the pre-K. But after we get to, what is it, like 15 kids or 10 kids? We need to bring in another teacher. So there's no way to keep up with it. Because if we need a new teacher for every 10 kids, and they give us $5,400 a kid, that's $54,000. But it costs us more to bring in another full-time employee than the $54,000 when you start doing benefits and everything. So, Senator Skoufis can say, we've got this much of unused aid, but that doesn't mean that we're not spending our money very efficiently, and I think we're providing the service out the best we can. Also, with the special ed, I know we had some students move into the district that really hit our special ed budget this year, but based on some of the other cost savings that we've done over the course of the year, we still expect to put in, I'm not going to hold you to this, but maybe $200,000 back into the fund balance, even though we spent more on the special ed, so that if we did lose that $150,000 of federal aid, that $200,000 that we put back into the fund balance would be there. So thanks, Brian.
Catherine has a question.
Yeah, we received $1.25 million from the Tuxedo Reserve Development. We have put that aside. That's not included in anything that we're doing here with the budget, because that money was, provided to us for improvement of program, improvement of the structure, and we don't want to see that money get spent in day-to-day operations. I don't think that's what it's for. So that's not in this budget. When you put out the final budget, we'll account for that and, make some decisions as to what to do with that.
So, if I heard correctly, I think Heather's asking, how is savings from the cafeteria fund helping us in the general fund? So I would say, if you look historically, we've operated at a deficit in the cafeteria fund. That deficit has had to be funded by the general fund, so we won't need to fund that deficit. That would be how it would help. I think she said something. I didn't hear it.
Would that go back into the fund balance, she said?
Savings?
Would that go back into the fund balance?
Would what?
Would what, Heather? Well, he's saying that the food bracket was always losing money, and we would have to grab money from the general fund to pay what we were losing in the food department. So now that we got rid of that guy, he's saying we're not gonna have to grab money anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so any surplus that you have at the end of the school year, yeah, we'll do an analysis. It'll go to unassigned, it'll go to the reserves, wherever it'll go, but it will end up in fund balance, yes.
I just want to move on so we can get to the salutarian and
Understood.
nice job, thanks. Could you come into the executive session for the first couple of minutes and then you'll be done? and the public. We're going to skip the public comment and the other item. We'll come right back to it. But we have the valedictorian and salutatorian pinning tonight, and I don't want them to have to wait here all night for us to get to it. So I'm going to hand it back over to our GFB principal, Mr. Kamar, and if you want to take it from here. Thanks.
All right, good evening. Dante, are we set here? You can hear me okay? A special presentation this evening to honor, welcome, and recognize our salutatorian for the class of 2025 and our valedictorian for the class of 2025. We'll start with our salutatorian for the class of 2025 is Amanda Dykstra. Come on down, Amanda. Board President Mr. Kasherkun is going to present Amanda with a pin that she'll be able to wear at graduation, and she'll also receive a medallion that she'll be able to wear with her cap and gown. And Amanda has been accepted into Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, Fairfield University. We're not done. She's got a nice list here. University of Connecticut, Northeastern University, and the University of Massachusetts. She's still waiting a reply from SUNY Binghamton as well. And whichever of these prestigious institutions that she chooses, she plans to pursue biomedical engineering as her major. And we are very proud of Amanda for all of her achievements thus far in her educational journey, and also for those that she will surely obtain in the future. Congratulations. Yeah. Yeah. Great job, Amanda. And at this time, we would like to welcome our valedictorian for the class of 2025, Casey Monte. Congratulations, Casey. Casey has received acceptances from Virginia Tech, SUNY Binghamton, and Stony Brook University thus far, and is still waiting to hear from the United States Military Academy, Case Western Reserve, and Carnegie Mellon. While she is still undecided, she is considering choosing a career path as a doctor, possibly in pediatrics. Regardless of what she ultimately settles on, we are sure that she will be successful based on her great track record here at Tuxedo. Thank you, Casey. Two outstanding young ladies, and certainly their families are here, and we're glad they could join us here this evening. I know with their academics, you have some studying to do this evening, and we have a long board meeting left ahead of us, so thank you for coming out tonight, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Okay, my name's Susan Mitchell, and I'm a parent, and I'm the co-vice president of the PTO. I just wanted to give a little bit more explanation for why I was asking about the playground. in 2019, when I was part of the PTO, we had done some looking into the playground and the structures, and we were trying to get a grant and trying to like look into what we needed to do to improve the playground structures. And there were some that were cracked, and I just kind of, the posts were cracked, and so I just wanted to know that somebody was looking into it carefully to make sure it's safe. I have pictures if you want to see.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just one picture, or should we scroll?
It's on the structure with the monkey bars. It's a very old structure.
These are metal posts, correct?
I'm really not sure. I just wanted to make you aware.
Understand? Fair enough.
Looks dangerous.
Take a look at it.
Got it.
Thank you.
From Bonnie. Current college acceptances.
Florida class acceptances.
Thus far.
Hi, I'm Bronwyn Rowantree. I have two questions. I know this is not a question and answer, but one, unless I'm going crazy, which is probably always true, I thought I saw on the agenda that there was the proposal to combine several regular and honors classes at the high school, and then I can't find it on the agenda anymore. So I was just wondering if that was still under consideration, and if it was, just raise some concerns, because it would seem that if you're going to combine the classes, either it's going to go too quickly for the kids who would do better in the regular pace and too slowly for the kids who would be better served by the faster pace. So just wondering if that's off the table, or, you know, and if so, what has happened to change that and to raise that as a concern. And then I had a question about something on a later agenda item, which, so I saw in the presentation that the budget presentation, that there seems to have been great cost savings from eliminating certain consultant positions. And it looks like maybe there's another consultant position being considered. And so, and I think it said on the text that was like $30,000 or up to $30,000, which would be roughly a third of the already achieved savings. So I was just wondering, you know, to what extent that consultant was necessary, and I don't know any of the details, but after the building presentation, that was quite sobering, particularly seeing the condition of the GGM roof. And so I don't know how all the money is moved around, but that seems like a really high priority. And so if there is room to sort of be a little bit more circumspect in other areas, maybe that would be something to consider. So those are just my thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have some
terms
comments
of
from
the-
people.
In terms of the honors and the combined classes, I mean, you know, based on our size, I understand your concern, but when you have such a low student-to-teacher ratio, I think that, you know, the amazing teachers that we have, you know, especially in this building, I think that they can be, you know, nimble enough to pull that off and to do so, you know, very successfully. I look at some of the acceptances that we've seen so far. You know, I know we already have one student accepted to West Point, right? Another one pending, and we've had students over the last several years go Ivy League, and we're talking about MIT, and it seems to me like we're really doing a good job with those, making sure that those higher performing students get what they need in order to really excel. So, Kimberly, you wanted to add something into public comment?
Yeah, I have a few things here. At the last meeting, it was mentioned that Superintendent Mr. White would be returning February 28th. Did the district give a directive to him not to return? And if so, why? And if so, are we still paying him? The next one is, have you noticed that the enrollment has gone down again? And do you do exit interviews of the leaving students and families? Is Mr. White officially out? If not, is the board ever going to officially account for where he is and why he has not returned? Who will the consultant for the superintendent be consulting? Will it be with Mr. White or Mrs. T? Why is this needed in such a small district? Why is a superintendent from Monroe Woodbury coming here? Is the district intending to merge? Those are the questions. Thank you.
Any other comment?
Yeah, Dan, I have one comment before we move on. I just wanted to thank you for your leadership in orchestrating a number of extracurricular activities since the last board meeting. As both a board and community member, it's been refreshing to see all the positive changes you are spearheading to provide extracurricular opportunities for both the students and the community. I'd also like to thank the PTO, Tuxedo Rec, the school administration, support staff, and for all the volunteers for organizing and running these fantastic programs. I'll let you explain the programs going forward. Thank
Well,
you.
I certainly appreciate that, and nothing here is done alone. You know, you and Bonnie, Will, and Gary, and Heather, and Kimberly have all been driving forces to get this stuff done. But just some notes here. We started Saturday basketball on March the 8th, and we have 8 participants in that, grades 3 through 6. And volunteers Matt Takeuchi, John Sandak, Ricky March. On the March 10th, we have the Monday through Thursday after school GGM math and reading intramural programs. And we've had 40 daily participants in those programs, which is great. Wednesday night, thank you to the PTO, the basketball games 9 through 12. We've had 10 participants in that. On the 17th, we started with the PTO co-ed volleyball, grades 4 through 6, 10 participants. Is it last night? Basketball?
Yes, last night.
We had an adult use of the gym for basketball, and there were 21 participants. The parking lot was full. Coming up on Thursday, the co-ed basketball will try to go off again, and special recognition for the PTO, Tuxedo Rec, for coming together with the school to make this stuff possible and to do this. And it's just wonderful to first to think about the impact that we're going to make with the kids and their test scores coming up. When you've got 40 kids, coming into the school for extra reading help and extra math help in a fun and interactive way after school. And it's so good to see the gym being used the way that it is with the whole community here. So great stuff. Thank you for bringing it up, Chris.
Can people still join all those programs?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. There's also an opportunity here for public input on the budget, but I think we pretty well covered that. Does anybody else want to get up and speak to that? Just want to make sure we mentioned it.
Dan, I passed down the list off the website of the current college acceptances, and anybody can go on the website and look, but so far our seniors have been accepted at 51 colleges in 37 different colleges, 51 acceptances at 37 different colleges and universities. and 22 of those acceptances were at colleges that rank in the top 100 colleges and universities by U.S. News and World Report. So I think this senior class has distinguished itself.
Excellent. Thank you for
Thanks, Mom.
thank you for bringing this, and we'll leave a copy of this down in the audience if anyone wants to look at it when we go into executive session. I have noticed here that we're starting to see St. John's a lot. I think we've established a kind of a pipeline into St. John's, which is great. Oh, yeah, okay, so we'll bring that up. Ordinarily, there's a public comment at the beginning of the meeting, and then there's public comment at the end of the meeting. The beginning of the meeting is usually historically restricted to agenda items. The end of the meeting is pretty much anything you want to talk about. We haven't been holding to that. We let people talk about whatever they want. In the beginning, just want to make sure no one wanted to talk about something that wasn't, they thought they needed to wait till the end. Thanks, Gary. Why don't we go to 4.1, the superintendent's report?
I'll be sharing a few remarks here this evening on behalf of Superintendent Teed. The parent-teacher conferences were held for pre-K through 12 earlier this month. The kindergarten orientation was held on March 12th next door at GGM. We had a successful superintendent's conference day on the 18th, which included a presentation by Ulrika von Stackelberg from the Cornell Cooperative based on trauma-informed practices in our schools. In addition, we reviewed our RTI and MTSS processes in both GGM and GFB, followed by time for GGM to do some work in their literacy and math interventions, tightening things up here as we get ready for state testing. We also continued our work in our SEL training, working on delivering activities and lessons for our students with our ruler program. And in the afternoon, GFB worked on STAR testing data, which is our diagnostic for literacy and math for our middle school and high school students, as well as a review of Bars on the Web, which is a software through BOCES that warehouses all of our state exam test scores to review for both instructional practice and to review for student learning. A reminder that our spring musical, The Addams Family, will be at 7 p.m. on March 28th and 29th, and at 2 p.m. on March 30th. The kids have been working very hard on that. It's going to be a great production, and that'll be held here in the GFB auditorium. The pre-K orientation will be held on April 3rd at 1 p.m. in the GGM multipurpose room. And just some updates on the upcoming state testing for grades 3 through 8. In grades 3 through 8, we conduct NICED testing for literacy, math, and science. The grades 3-8 test for ELA will begin on April 8th, and the math state testing will begin on April 30th. And then there's 1 day of state testing that we'll review later, but that's for science, and that'll be in May. And our spring recess is a reminder for families, April 14th through the 18th. And we have conducted evaluations, first round on all staff. We have different levels of rounds of evaluations that occur for probationary staff versus tenured staff. And all staff have received a full observation, so we're well on our way here. Pending approval later in the agenda, Ms. Park is going to be approved as our second evaluator of teachers, and she and I have our plans situated to finalize the remaining evaluations that need to occur, which the heavy lift is complete in that process as the second round for our tenured staff. The first round is a full conducted evaluation, and the second round is a walkthrough, which is an abbreviated portion of the evaluation process. So we're well ahead of schedule and looking forward to completing those here this spring. And that concludes our remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before we move on, when we talked about all of those activities at the, at the gym and at the math clubs, and I want to thank Ryan McKenna, John Bauer, Julius Floyd, Yvonne Machuca, Vanessa Duarte, Elizabeth Noble, Ryan McKenna, Ashley Scanlon, Alyssa Scanlon. If I missed anyone, I apologize, but those are the volunteers that are helping us do all of this. Certainly appreciate their help.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, 5.1, approval of APPR lead evaluator for teachers. That would be to make Ms. Park an evaluator. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. 5.2, approval of scorekeepers and chaperones for the 24-25 school year. They are listed. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5.3, approval of a teacher mentor for the 24-25 school year. This is contractual. The stipend is what it is. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approval of a resolution for administrative office placements. I think we're all pretty happy with the way that things are running at this point. And we'd like to make it so that if we are going to move the offices around again, that we get some input from the board first. Can I have a motion?
I move the resolution, which you would read it.
Be it resolved that the administrative offices of the district shall remain in their current placements pending further action by the Board of Education.
And I move that resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Discussion. Why is it now being put into a resolution that it can't be changed without the board, but this change was put in place without the board to begin with?
No, she's asking, why do we have a resolution to keep them where they are when there was no resolution to move them? I think the question answers itself. I think that we should have resolutions from the board before we move all the offices around. That's why. Any other discussion? All in favor?
But just now, after it's moved, right? Dan?
What I'm saying, Heather, is the offices were moved with no input from the board. I don't think that that should happen. And if they're going to be moved again, there should be board input. If you don't agree with that,
Dan, who made the decision for the offices to be moved under your watch as president? Who made that decision? Was it Mrs. Teed or was it you?
the acting superintendent,
Why?
because the superintendent had the power to move the offices around with no board input, which is why we're doing what we're doing.
Are you saying that we shouldn't have input?
What was the reason it was moved? What was the reason it was moved in the beginning, in the first place?
I wasn't involved
I
in that.
wasn't involved in it, I don't know.
The question is, are you saying that we should not have input? I'm confused if you're for or against the motion.
Well, I mean, I think it should go back to the way it was before the acting
Then like the
superintendent came in and moved everything.
Well, then you're for this motion, because if you want to have input, we have to vote to give ourselves input. So I'm confused, so you're for this motion?
I'm voting against this motion. It was done without us knowing. I'm sure that he did know, and it really doesn't have anything, frankly. It should be up to the administrators where they have their off. I'm not for this motion, no.
Okay.
All those, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
Okay, 5-2. Motion passes. Approval of a resolution for swipe-in, swipe-out controlled entrance. Be it resolved, all employees, including administrators, are required to swipe in at a swipe-controlled entrance each day upon arrival to the district. Can I have a motion?
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a discussion.
Go ahead, Kimberly.
Yeah, so we're asking everybody who works here that they need to swipe in, but the union members don't need to swipe in?
The union members are required, I believe, to swipe in by their contract, so there's
they're
no need.
already swiping in?
Yes.
So then how come it's written that they're excluded from it, the way that I read it?
Because I can't make demands on a union without negotiating. It's a
But if
condition
they
of work.
already are swiping in, then it's already part of their contract.
But we
Right.
can't,
But
but
it
we can't
makes
make a motion
Makes
to
it much
force them.
simpler to exclude them and not have it come back at us as a workplace grievance.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.
Aye.
One opposed.
Nothing, she was an aye.
I think Heather was an
I was
opposed.
opposed.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, approval of a resolution authorizing Matt Takeuchi to accept ballot applications.
Skip 5-6.
Oh, didn't I?
Typically, wouldn't this be done by the board clerk?
I'm sorry, Heather, we're gonna back up a minute. Did I miss one?
5-6.
We had
5-6?
5-5.
Okay,
5-6 is similar, but different.
oh, I read 5-6 before, instead of 5-5. So let's do it all again, so it's done right, okay?
So I move 5, yeah, I think we had a
Yeah.
confusion. So I move 5-5 for passage,
Okay.
which reads,
Be it resolved that the board hereby implements a swipe into work and swipe and sign out from work system to determine the attendance of all employees, including all administrators not covered by the TTU or the TEU contracts, and hereby requires all such employees to engage in the use of such system.
and I think we discussed that.
We discussed
So we
it.
have a second on the correct one?
Second.
Okay. We already discussed it unless someone wants to chime in again. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Is this the swipe in?
Yeah.
Opposed?
5.6, approval of the resolution for swipe in, swipe out controlled entrance. Be it resolved that all employees, including administrators, are required to swipe in at a swipe controlled entrance each day upon arrival to the district.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Did we do this? We didn't vote on this 2 times already?
No, they messed up,
We
so
had the
we just
numbers
had to
wrong.
redo it.
Yes.
Heather, are you opposed to that one?
Yes.
I'm still opposed.
Okay. 5.7, resolution authorizing Matt Takeuchi to accept ballot applications. Be it resolved, Matt Takeuchi is authorized to accept early mail ballot applications and ballots and absentee ballot applications and ballots on behalf of the district clerk and to secure them in a locked box to be picked up by the district clerk.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I know that our
Discussion.
district clerk is not employed by the district. That is not common, but it's not unusual either. It happens. And in order to accommodate the election services, we need to have a person appointed with a lockbox that can accept the applications, put them in the lockbox, and then the district clerk will come at the end of the day, pick up the lockbox and put the ballots in a secure location in the building. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I find this to be a conflict of interest since his mother sits on the board. So, are there not 100 other employees within our district that we could choose from?
There aren't 100 other employees that sit in the main office behind the desks and are there all day, so.
What
and in
about the
terms of-
secretary of the superintendent?
She was moved downstairs, Kimberly, that's why.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah,
Aye.
Aye.
No, this discussion is ongoing, Dan. This is an issue of the doing of the board when they separated these two positions from having a district clerk be the same position as be shared with the superintendent's secretary, so that that person was there to do the job as part of the job to collect those ballots. So the discussion is ongoing with why we separated those two roles and then caused these additional issues. And this really could be done, this could be collected by Chris Murphy. And also, the other question I have is this going to come with an additional stipend?
First, there's no additional stipend. Secondly, the way that the election was conducted last year wound up with us in court. One of the losing candidates, I think it was Mr. Ricard, sued the district. We thought it best to have a more independent district clerk, and we're hopeful that this will work. If it doesn't work,
I don't remember going to court.
Election
the district
disruption
sued.
was partially caused by members of this board, Dan.
Right.
At any rate, I don't
So,
see a conflict of
That's not a
interest.
good reason.
Well, there is a conflict
And
of
it is
interest
a
when
conflict
it's
of
the
interest.
son of somebody who's sitting on the board is handling all the absentee ballots.
Ms. Takeuchi, are you up for re-election this year?
No, I am not.
Yeah, there's no, in my opinion, there's no conflict at all. There's one person that
You never
lives in
think
this
there's a conflict
district.
of interest.
There's
There
one
is a
person that
conflict
lives
of
in this
interest, Dan.
district would be
That's
best
ridiculous.
suited for this job, and that's why I made this motion to have Matt Takeuchi take envelopes from people and in view of that person, put them in a locked box that the district clerk has a key to. I'm not concerned about that process.
And Matt
Fine, yeah, I'll
Takeuchi
see.
did serve as the acting district clerk here for about 7 or 8 months, so he's
He's qualified.
well aware of the process. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Abstain.
Opposed?
I abstain.
4, 1 abstention, 2 against, motion passes. Does anyone, 6.1, have any questions on the business reports? Want me to pull anything out?
I'll move them all for adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 I didn't hear Heather.
Yeah, aye.
Approval of the CSE, CPSC recommendations?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? I'd just like to say, in looking at the CSE, CPSE recommendations, the department is doing an amazing job in making sure that there's no personally identifiable information coming out in those reports. That has not always been the case, and I appreciate it. All in favor?
Aye.
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 6.3, approval of a supplemental memorandum of agreement for the Tuxedo Teachers Association for the 24-25 school year. Jared, could you tell us a little bit about that one?
Just gotta catch up to it.
It's the mentoring program. So this is about the 2 classes?
Yeah.
Does he need a copy? This is a copy of it.
Elaborate, yeah, sure.
Looks like that.
Does he need it?
Yeah. I don't know if it was included. It's not in his bag.
So this MOA is what was referenced a little bit earlier here in the meeting in public comment regarding the combination of honors. This is for our Global 1 and Global 2. our 9th and 10th grade English as well as our U.S. history. And what that means is that those section of kids would co-seat in that coursework. Just a few points to speak to that. I think first that this begins for the 25-26 school year and then would have a sunset added to it. So that's taken into account. There are 2 cohorts of grade levels that are small in population. So in working with our teaching staff and internally looking at trying to take the current staff that we have, best service the kids that are in each grade level while thinking of the whole continuum across grades 7 through 12. Where this helps us, and just a point of clarification, the curriculum is the same. There's no difference to the course requirements and standards. Those students still take the culminating Regents exams in 11th grade English, 10th grade Global Studies, and then 11th grade US. So this is all preparatory work heading towards those exams. There's no honors designation to the Regents exam. So what happens is the teachers would then differentiate. I'll give an example. If there's 7 students and happens to be 2 honors students, we wouldn't have a course section of 2 kids. We'll look to differentiate for those students that are in those sections. Where this helps us, in some years we haven't designated an honors in some of those classes. So this establishes the rigor for our students in grades 9 through 12 in all 4 of the content areas. Of course, in math and science, those students, while we don't have an honors designation in those grade levels, they get accelerated in the middle school so that they take living environment and algebra in 8th grade. So they're on a trajectory of being able to take advanced courses through grades 9 and 10 so that their requirements are met so that they can then be eligible to take the AP and college level classes, dual enrollment classes in 11th and 12th. So there's lots of benefits to the district for us to do this. It services our students at all grade levels, and it provides rigor in each content in both 9th and 10th grade, and then really helps us in later years where we can add additional electives, including AP in college.
When I've been on several scholarship committees over the years, and you see some kids that have a grade point average of 103. Does that come from because they're taking the honor classes and they get points added on, right?
It does.
So it will help our students who are very competitive for scholarships and whatnot to be able to take an honors designation and then get those points added on to their GPA when it comes time for, to getting into those top schools or doing, getting scholarships from the various community organizations.
Sure.
And I believe as I read this, the only real thing that the teachers who are participating in this are getting a reduction in some of their duties that they might have to do because they're doing prep for the extra class.
That's correct.
Okay.
Can I just clarify in layman's terms, if we had 2 different teachers in 2 different classrooms and one level of study was here and one level of study was here, this of course being the honors, does that mean that everybody's getting this, or are they still getting this and this?
Yeah, certainly it would be ideal if you had the numbers to separate them.
But if they're together?
Yeah, when they're together, it's the same grade level standard, and where you differentiate for your honor students is in the rigor of the assignments, the assessments that they might be given.
So it is different?
It is different, yeah. So then that would be weighted if you were honors and I was in the regular Global 1, my average would average, let's say we both had a 90, because you were doing more rigorous work and assessments, your grade is weighted differently in your transcript.
So from the student's perspective, if I'm in the same classroom with non-honors, but I'm an honor student, from the student's perspective, it's hard, my work is harder.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And at the end of those years, they still take the same final exam, though.
Right.
The credit is the credit.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a question. So global and global is history? Or, okay. So how come we have number 8 and it says the teachers of the social studies department shall be relieved of their duty assignments if they are teaching the combined classes, but we're not offering that to the English teachers. Why would we offer it just to one and not the other?
I think, well, Mr. Kamar, when I was in high school here and we combined honors students, we all did the same work. It was 10th, 11th, and 12th grade English, and we all read the same plays, short stories, novels, and took the same tests. There was no higher standard, no longer papers required for anybody in the class. It was all the same. Whereas Global 1 and Global 2, Global 1 and Global 1 honors, if I understood the explanation before, the Global 1 honors students would have extended expectations. They might have additional assignments, longer papers. Is that correct, Mr.
Sorry, but
Kamar?
I can't hear any answer here.
You okay if I jump in, Ms. Takeuchi?
Yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that, so,
Can you repeat the question for?
yeah, the question is, why are the social studies teachers receiving less duty than ELA? And what happens is, in Global 1 and then Global 2, I'm prepping for, if I'm teaching Global 1, I'm prepping for my Global 1 students and my honor students. In Global 2, for my Global 2 students and my honor students. It's more difficult in social studies to stack the classes into one year and then another and separate them because of the continuum of the content, right? So in ELA, what happens is we combine the 9th and 10th grade regular ed students, and we combine the 9th and 10th grade honors students. So my prep is less than what we're expecting from the social studies. So if I'm a 9th grader this year, I may combine with the 9-10 students to take regular English, and we're receiving maybe the 10th grade content. And then the content rotates the next year. We combine those 9th and 10th graders, and now as the instructor, I'm just teaching 9th grade content. So it's 1 year of prep for me per
Okay.
class. But in the honors, there's just a nuance to that.
Did I move this?
No, you did not.
Let's
If I,
move it again.
if I haven't moved this, I move this.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Any opposed? Okay, we have then 6 ayes and 1 abstention. I think Mr. Scanlon abstained. Six point four, approval of combining of teams for the 24-25 school year. Motion to approve combining modified baseball and modified softball with Suffern for the 24-25 school year.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
6.5, approval of new course offerings for the 25-26 school year.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm curious who's going to be teaching these classes, but I'm very happy that a lot of it is art.
And I was thrilled to see on there a college-level music course being added. So, you know, not all of these classes will be offered. They're being authorized in our catalog.
Oh, they're just being added to the
So
catalog.
we can, you know, we
Okay.
can choose as they finalize the schedule. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
6.6, approval of the amended 24-25 school calendar. Let me read it. Motion to approve a resolution to amend the 24-25 school calendar as follows. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the acting superintendent, the Board of Education will approve the amended 24-25 calendar to give back 2 unused emergency closing days as per the TTA contract to reflect the dates of April 21st and May 23rd. This approval will only go into effect if these days are unused by April 11th, 2025. If an unforeseen need to grant an emergency day is warranted after that date, the May 23rd, 2025 will remain a normal school day. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? At this time, I would accept a motion and second to enter into executive session for the discussion of employment of particular people.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Folks, there is a good chance that we will take action upon returning from executive session. If you'd like to wait. I'm not sure how long
It's
this will
probably
take.
gonna be an hour or something, so.
Could be some. I have a motion to return from executive session?
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next up on the agenda is 8.2, approval of a resolution for the superintendent of schools. I'll read it. Be it resolved that the superintendent of schools is hereby directed to assist Special District Counsel Howard Miller of Bond, Shonek, and King immediately in securing electronic communications as described in writing by the council.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
8.3. 8.2 we just did, right? Resolution for the superintendent of schools. 8.3, well, we're not gonna skip it. We just, if it doesn't get a second or a motion, then it's fine. We should do it. Okay. 8.3, resolution for special district council. Be it resolved that the scope of the engagement of the special district council is hereby expanded as set forth in a revised engagement letter. Can I have a motion? Okay, the item fails for lack of a motion. 8.4, resolution authorizing the board president to enter into a contract with Elsie Rodriguez as a consultant to the superintendent of schools. Be it resolved that the board hereby authorizes the board president to enter into a contract on behalf of the district for the services of Elsie Rodriguez to serve as a consultant to the superintendent of schools, to promote improvement of the executive processes of the district, and to issue periodic reports to the board. Reporting will include analysis of attendance, submission of required reporting, morale improvement, community involvement, cost containment, town and village relations, parent outreach, and any other benchmarks and goals as may be set by the consultant. Can I have a motion? Oh, there's more on the next page. Oh, the hourly rate for such services will be negotiated between the parties, but the total value of the contract shall not exceed $330,000 without additional authorization of the board. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
For a second. Any discussion?
Yes, discussion. As far as 8 to 9, outside consultants, I would rather
Any other comment? I can let you know that Elsie Rodriguez is a retired superintendent of schools from the Monroe Woodbury School District. Was there for 13 years and has an outstanding record, and I think will do a terrific job as a consultant for us. There have been no discussions regarding merging with Monroe Woodbury. Someone brought that up earlier based on this resolution, and I think I certainly speak for myself, and I think I speak for everyone here when we decided to move into this wonderful small town of Tuxedo that we did so for a reason. And I'm, as much as I admire what Monroe Woodbury does, it's not the school that I signed up for, and it's not what I would want to merge with. That said, all in favor of passing 8.4?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
2 opposed? Okay. The enrollment reports, motion passes. The enrollment reports are attached. And at this time, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.